Welcome to the Hazard Class Podcast. This is the podcast where I ask my stupid questions of some of the smartest people in and around the world of emergency services. Today on the podcast, we're joined by a fire captain from Cobb County Fire and Emergency Services. With a career spanning over 30 years, he has built a reputation as an expert in fire dynamics and tactical operations. He holds a degree in fire safety engineering and has completed studies at the Naval Postgraduate School in Homeland Security. He serves on the UL Fire Safety Research Institute Advisory Board and has contributed extensively to fire safety research and standards through his involvement with NFPA committees. He co-authored the Evolving Fireground, which recently released a second edition and runs training programs aimed at improving evidence-based fire tactics across the country. My pleasure to welcome Sean Gray. Sean, thank you for joining me.
Hey, man, how are you?
Good. I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you taking the time. We were just talking, you're out in Vegas now for STRIVE, the IAFF conference. So I appreciate you taking the time. There's plenty of other things to consume your day with in Vegas. So taking the time to talk to me, I appreciate it.
No, man, I appreciate it. I mean, you actually got me away from the bar for a moment, so it's all good. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Your pocketbook definitely appreciate it, especially in Vegas.
Absolutely.
But all right. So there's a billion things to talk about, but we can't get to everything that has happened in your career without getting to the whys of why you got into the fire service in the first place. So bring me back to your youth. Why the fire service?
And so I grew up in Southern California and, was a surfer skater kid. And really, I graduated high school and didn't know really what I was going to do. Didn't quite have a direction, had applied to some colleges, but I wasn't sure if that was what I wanted to do. And I was in the middle of my parents going through a divorce. And so I was honestly kind of lost. And a guy that I knew from surfing, and he was a couple of years older than me, had gotten into firefighting. And so maybe 2 weeks after high school graduation, I see him, and I think we actually were surfing together, and he was like, "Oh, you should come and try out this the fire department thing and go over to the local firehouse. They got pay call firefighters, and go in there like a Tuesday night, a training night or whatever, and go check it out. And I'll call a buddy of mine that's where I started and go hang out." So that's exactly what I did, and so I went over to the firehouse and met some dudes there, and I was just like, "Oh man, this is it!" So they immediately started giving me advice, like, "Oh yeah, go to EMT school right away, first semester of college." So I signed up at the local community college and went to EMT class, and from there started working on an ambulance and fire academy and all that kind of stuff. Just fell in afterwards, and eventually got hired, and here we are today. And
just a blink of an eye.
So. Yeah, blink of an eye, 34 years later, nothing.
Yeah.
So,
So no family history in the fire service at all?
Nope. I think just because of my childhood growing up outdoors, I raced motorcycles as a kid and did all kinds of the crazy Southern California stuff that everybody sees. I was all wrapped up in all of that. So I didn't really want to be in an office. That was the thing. It's like, I'm not a 9-to-5 guy. I'm not an admin guy. So I want to be outside and working outside. And so that was really kind of what drove me to that. And I think initially I was really heavy into surfing at the time. So I wanted to have a job that I could work 24 hours and then on my days off, go surf.
Yeah.
That was kind of my initial plan, but so.
I always think this is an interesting thing to think about when you think about these people that don't have family histories in the fire service or public service. What did your family make of this idea that you were going to do this?
I think initially, they were proud. It was something just completely out of the blue. They weren't against it by any means. And then, once I finally got hired and got on the job, my parents were both very excited. So they're full support all the way. It was never like, "Hey, you must go do this." And, I grew up in a blue collar, household that kind of middle class type of thing. So it wasn't like it was this hardcore push towards education or anything like that. Very supportive.
So you got on a paid per call department in Southern California. Is that right? How
Yep.
long were you there before you transitioned to working full time?
So I was working, if you know anything about the Southern California world, it takes a while, man. There's a lot of stepping stones that, I think some of the young guys that come on job in Cobb County, they have no idea, but SoCal's a difficult place to get hired. Like, I was standing in lines with hundreds of other firefighters, hell, I tested for LA City in like 1996 or something like that. And it was like, thousands of people. I stood in line. Like the written test was at the Forum in Los Angeles. It was stupid. So yeah, it was wild, right? And so and just sat on background lists and stuff like that. So it took a couple of years once I got to through Fire Academy and stuff like that. And but yeah, then once I was working, I basically what drove me out of Southern California was I was working as an auxiliary firefighter with City of Linwood Fire Department. And was working on the ambulance and all that kind of stuff, still trying to get a full-time job. I was in backgrounds with LA City Fire. And so I thought, like, you're going to get hired by LA City. This is going to be it, right? Dude, that process, it was like a couple years into it. I'm paying 2 rents. I was living in the city of Los Angeles, plus in Newport Beach with my buddies. And I was broke, man. And so I was dating a girl and she was like, hey, you want to move to Atlanta? And I'm like, I don't know. I've never even been to Atlanta. So we got on a plane and went and checked it out. And then when I got to Atlanta, I went into a couple of firehouses and I'm like, hey, I'm a certified firefighter, certified paramedic from California. And they're like, I can get a job wherever you want. I'm like, it can't be that easy. And sure enough, man, first application, had a job within like 6 weeks and that was it. Rest is history.
Wow. Yeah. Do you remember a moment early on where you were like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life? Like, from that casual interest to the kind of a dedication career long?
Yeah, honestly, probably like early on, as soon as I got my EMT, like I went and worked on a 911 ambulance in South Orange County, California. And when I first started running 911 calls and running with the fire department and like looking up to those guys as mentors and everything, I'm like, you know what, this is it. This is what I want to do. Like, I love this. It's so much fun. The adrenaline, the initially of driving emergency and that kind of stuff. And so, it's one of those things where you just kind of get hooked on it. But I'll be honest with you, man, early in my career, like I wasn't super engaged. It took an incident for me to kind of wake up and get into training and start learning my craft and everything like that. Like I was just a guy that just showed up to the firehouse and did my 24 hours and then went home.
So, I mean, inevitably that begs the question, would you be willing to talk about that incident and what you learned from it?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I was, I'm still a backstep firefighter in Cobb and I was getting ready to go through promotion process. So the way Cobb promotion processes are, it's firefighter, engineer, lieutenant, captain, battalion chief. So I was testing for engineer and had my first son. He was young, less than 1 year old when this incident happened. And so I've been reading books, strategy and tactics books, John Norman's book on strategy and tactics, and just starting to kind of ask questions and figure out how to do size ups and all the acting officer type of things, right? So we catch this fire and we pull up and I'm with a rookie. It's his very first fire. And so we stretch the line and my officer that I was working with at the time, just really not a very good officer, pretty shit officer. The officer that's like not going to get dressed. He's too salty, end of his career, goes and does a walk around, comes back around, like doesn't even have his coat on. And I'm like, clearly I'm going into this fire with this rookie by myself. I'm taking this kid in. So so we get to the front door and it's rocking fire, dude. It looks like it's heavily involved from the rear of the structure. And open up the front door and heavy chugging smoke coming out the front door, just pumping smoke. And I remember thinking like, holy crap, my first fire was like a freaking trash can fire or something. And this guy's got this freaking amazing fire, right? So at the time, man, I didn't know anything about like neutral planes or flow paths so of course I chalked the door wide open. This is 20 years ago now. And chalked the door wide open and we make the push to the interior, immediately hit with high heat. This was a time when, it wasn't flowing. We weren't supposed to flow water on smoke, all those things. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you like, that's total bullshit because when you're in a bad situation like that, you're opening up the nozzle no matter what people say, right? So we got in a bad situation. So I started telling them to open up the line and flow water. And we were basically in this big open 2-story living room and the fire was in a back kitchen And it was in a doorway that I couldn't even see any flames or anything, no glow. So we continued to push in, and man, I just got in there and had a bad feeling. Things were super hot. We're all the way on the floor. We're flowing water. Things aren't getting better. And I'm like, okay, you've got to do something. We've got to go. And so I decided to tell him, like, all right, come on, let's go. We're backing out. So turn around and do a 180 and come right back out the front door. And as we're coming out the front door, the whole thing lights off, like burns up, melts the back of my jacket. Everything lights off. And I was like, oh shit. All right. That was cool. You know, got a little salt in my helmet or whatever, and get out there. And Chief's like, hey, take your line around the rear. So I'm like, okay. So we pull the line around the rear. I get to the back of the house, and I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. We were going head into that, right on into that. Right. And, so anyway, so I got back there and I started just doing some reflecting as we were fighting fire and calling the radio. I was like, hey, we need a 2.5 to the rear because the whole back of the place is going. And so after the fire is over, I get back to the firehouse and I start asking questions like, hey, why did we go through the front door when we should have just stretched the line to the rear and hit that thing, head on? And he's like, oh, we got to go from the unburned side. And man, that was where a light bulb came on. I was like, why exactly is that? So I started asking questions like, why? Oh, well, that's what John Norman's book says, so that's what we're supposed to do. And the officer didn't know any better. And so I went on a deep dive, man. I had a baby at home and I just felt like, holy shit, you almost just got in a really bad situation. And it woke me up. And so I just dug in and found research and found NIST and found papers written by Dan Majikowski. And I just became obsessed. Signed up for school, went back to school, got an engineering degree from University of Cincinnati. All that stuff was all driven by this near miss. I wasn't trapped. I didn't have to call a Mayday or anything like that, but it scared me enough to go, holy crap, like this is a dangerous job. And really, you need to understand what the hell's going on, And so I got fired up, man. And I started learning and digging into all that stuff. And then Bill Gustin, of all people. So Bill Gustin, I always talk about him being my mentor. So he came to Cobb County as an outside speaker, and I went and saw his class for the day. And then we invited him to come and sit down at the firehouse. So we're there, and he's like having dinner, and he's like, if you know Bill, like Bill would always like research all the departments that he went and taught for. So he's sitting at the kitchen table, and he's like, man, you guys have a lot of fires that start on the outside. You guys had a lot of deck fires. And, and I hadn't really shared my story much. And one of the guys at the kitchen table were like, oh, great. Tell them about the fire you had, that deck fire. And he's like, yeah. So I basically tell him, a version of the same story I just told you. And he's like, you should write an article on that from Fire Engineer Magazine. I'm like, I'm a driver in Cobb County, Georgia. I don't know how to write a magazine article. Like, what the hell? So, So anyway, so we exchanged email addresses, and I thought it was just one of those, kitchen table conversations that just kind of go away. Nobody's ever going to follow up on it or anything. A week later, that joker freaking emails me and he's like, hey, where's the rough draft? And I was like, oh shit, this guy's freaking serious. And so I started working on an article, and he helped me write that first article. We worked on it together, and next thing you know, it gets published, and I'm in Fire Engineer Magazine. And then that just opened up everything. Went to FDIC for the first time that year, and it was just whole new world just opened up and became something that I never really understood, to the point where now, like, I look back on that and 20 years later, and it's like obsession almost, of just like trying to be better than what you were. It's something every day trying to be better, learn something from other people. And that's really where it all came from, man.
So early on in that story, you mentioned that you had just had a kid. How do you think that affected your, risk benefit analysis and your kind of post-incident debrief with that new stress in life?
100% the driving factor. That new stress in life, like it made me, the light bulb came on of like, oh, you're not this salty young fireman anymore. Like you're a dad. And you have responsibilities. You have to frickin' know your job better than this. And you almost just got jammed up because of a crappy officer kind of doing what he told you to do. You can be better than that, So that was really the reason, man, was having that kid at home and decided to wake me up. And I just started reading and becoming obsessed with the job.
Mm-hmm. So let's go backwards a little bit to your start at Cobb County, right? So you get hired. What's that onboarding process like? What do you remember from that point?
Yeah, so Cobb historically has been a pretty difficult department to get hired at. Their background process is really tough. And so it has a an upper echelon, in the metro area or in Georgia of like, oh man, you work for Cobb, and how the hell did you get hired there? Like, there's a lot of really good firemen in the Metro Atlanta area that, got turned down by Cobb for whatever reason, and because they smoked marijuana in high school 20 years ago or something ridiculous like that, So, so the process is a little bit rigorous, but looking back on it, having gone through Fire Academy in Southern California, like the recruit school was like a breeze, like nothing even close to anything militaristic like what California has. And so I kind of stood out, as a younger firefighter, kind of as an all-star, because I had a skill set that had been built from the Fire Academy and the very paramilitary academies from Southern California. And so I definitely had an advantage over others for sure.
That's interesting you bring that up, because I did the weekly scrap with Corley Moore a couple weeks ago, and we talked about fire academies, and we talked about like where the line is between paramilitary and, making them hard enough that, not everyone can pass. And, are they physical fitness focused? Are they fireground tactics focused? So what's the Sean Gray take on that? What does the perfect fire academy look like?
So I went to the guy who was our PT instructor at my academy in California, Foothill Fire Academy. And he was a former Marine drill instructor. And bro, it was hardcore, man, like hundreds and hundreds of push-ups and pull-ups, and very, very rigorous, right? So that they put us through it. And I can remember, like, the guy was super funny, like the things that he would say to you, like pull a string off your uniform as they're doing a spec and be like, what is this, great? I could hang myself with this, those type of things. You try not to laugh, and and if you smile, then you're in more trouble. And so I definitely, like, that was all I knew. But going to that now, like, the newer generations, I still like discipline. I like a combination of both, right? Like, I think that there's a way that you can do it to where it's respectful. You can get people to understand that there's a chain of command, and they have to understand, what they're getting themselves into. This is a very serious job. But at the same time, like, I don't think you need to line them up, at attention. Like, we were squaring off corners and doing everything very militaristic. And I don't think we need to do that. You can be a little bit more relaxed, but at the same time, like, they definitely need to, put their gear together, like attention to detail, line things up every day. And they should be able to be able to be focused on the details. And that's where some of that military stuff really drives in positive things. And now, like, the recruit school that I went through in the early days of Cobb, ours has completely changed now. So, and I think our recruit school is great. The way that we're handling things right now, it's done the right way.
I would be interested to get your take on this based on your kind of, your expertise in the science of firefighting and tactics, which is, I have a real gripe with the Fire 1 and 2 curriculum, right? Like the classic textbook. And like, that's one of my career goals, is to somehow move the needle on making that more science-based. Right. But how do you reconcile that with your skill set and your understanding of the actual scientific effect of these tactics with like some of the things that are being taught, to every firefighter across the nation in the Fire 1 and 2 curriculum, say through the classic textbooks, of the, hand on the boot, hand on the wall searches, and, the twin locking donut hose roll that nobody's ever used in the history of the world. I really thought that there was going to be a lot more folding of tarps when I came through the Fire Academy, but like,
yeah, of course.
How do you, as someone that's an expert in this field, like, look at that curriculum and not think of it as a joke? Or maybe you do, but how do we fix it for the betterment of the American Fire Service?
It takes a long time. And I'll tell you that having worked with FSRI and on the advisory board, that was something that Steve Kerber tasked us with as the advisory board, was like, hey, I need you guys out there contacting IFSTA, getting on these IFSTA validation committees, starting to change the books that's where we've got to get into that. So if you look at actually fire engineering's textbook, it's used across the nation for certain fire academies. And I actually wrote the fire dynamics chapter for that. And if you look at the chapters that are in there, there's a lot of dudes writing the chapters. Some guys that are changing the books, like, Dustin Martinez from my department. He wrote the search chapter for, is it JB? I forget the other. There's 3 big manufacturers, right? One of them is Dustin Martinez is writing the search chapter, and another guy from my job's writing the ladders chapter. And so it's starting to get there. But by the time those things take years just to do the work, 1 or 2 years of you rewriting a document and it's starting to change. And then once it finally gets published, like we're 5 years later and it's like, hey, I have more information. Like, you know what I mean? We got to make more changes. So I think in the next probably 5 to 7 years, you're going to start to see the younger kids, a lot of that junk kind of gone, and people cleaning it up some. But I'll just give you an example. While I'm here in Vegas, I'm working with IAFF and a new group called the Evidence-Based Fireground Operations group. And we teach a combination classroom, hands-on class. But when we were talking about that title, Evidence-Based Fireground Operations, I honestly was like, do we have to call it evidence-based? Why can't we just call it fireground operations? I feel like we're at this point now where this is what everybody's doing. This is how everybody is searching. This is, it's not, a lot of this stuff's not new anymore. And so it's been long enough. And so they're like, we're not quite there yet. Maybe in a few years we can just call it fireground operations. I was like, why? We don't have to preface it with evidence-based anymore. It's because it's all evidence-based. So, but we're getting there.
Yeah. And it used to be a lot of anecdote or like, folklore handed down from the prior generations. And, it's great to see that we are getting to that point. But I guess along that line, we'll have to go back and touch up on some stuff throughout your career. But along that line, are we getting to the point that the science that it's so much has changed even in the last decade that I've been in the fire service of like what we thought we knew to what we actually know now in terms of tactics and strategies. Are we getting to the point where we can definitively make statements that we say, this is definitively better. The research is in hand. We don't have to research X subject anymore. Are there any things inside of the strategy and tactics, playbook that are no longer up for debate?
Yeah. I mean, I personally think there's a lot of it that's no longer up for debate, but you know how the fire service is. We love to debate things.
We do.
And so it's one of those things. I think it'll always be up for debate still, but just because it's really based on people's experiences, right? Like we're experiential learners. So a lot of people go through, they get that basic academy and then they get out and they start getting experience. And it's really based on your first officer, right? Like how valuable is your first officer that you get? And is that somebody that's plugged in and really knows their stuff? Or is it going to be a guy that's like super salty and he's be like, hey, don't pay any attention to all that stuff they taught you in academy. We're going to do it my way.
Yeah.
It depends. So, but I think that when people start to open up their eyes and they start to see things they take the experience and they match it with the research and they let that ego go. And I have so many friends now that work for large city departments and we're like really hardcore about some things. And they finally, after years of like just handing them documents, hey man, here's some more evidence for you. Here's more evidence. They finally like, yeah, man, you know what? Yeah, I was probably wrong. Like I was doing things wrong, but not that they were doing it wrong. Cause I don't want to say it that way, cause it sounds very negative, but they were doing it the way that they were taught and they just didn't know any better. They didn't know what they didn't know. And that's the thing. It's just like they hadn't been educated on it, and that program that I'm telling you about, we were just in Houston, Texas. And if you know anything about Houston Fire Department, very traditional place. They have a lot of hardcore things that are in place. A lot of dudes that have done many years, gone to hundreds of fires, tons of experience. And that was we went in there and I was expecting to have like a really big challenge to overcome. And almost like I was kind of like ready for the fight. And to be honest with you, it was like exactly opposite of that. Like we were the breath of fresh air that a lot of these younger guys in the Houston Fire Department that are captains and are coming up. There's kind of an old guard that's retiring and moving a group of captains. And it was classes that I've ever been part of. I have some great friends now from that class back in February that we text almost daily. These captains in Houston, just because we just hit it off, and very like-minded, and lots of questions. And we showed them some cool stuff, and they were just like, holy crap, I can't believe that we didn't know this stuff, and I think there's always, with the science stuff, there's always like a defensive mechanism of like, oh, that's stuff soft, like that's real sissy stuff. I don't really want to bring that up. It's kind of safety-ish. We don't want to bring that in. And so they kind of had that opinion of it. And then when we got there and showed them like, hey, it's actually really not. Like, you can actually be faster, smarter, and more aggressive. This stuff will make you more aggressive on the fireground, because you start to see and understand the way the fire is reacting to the tactics and tasks that you're doing. And if you look at it that way, like, you can be so much better. And I am way better of a firefighter than I was 20 years ago, all because of this stuff, because of the people I've been around, the people I've learned from, the understanding the fire dynamics of it. Once you see it and it gets in your head and you start clicking on the fireground, and you start to watch the way the smoke moves, and you're paying attention to the velocity and understanding high pressure to low pressure and all of those things, like you can see it, like, hey, the fire's here, it's headed here. We need to do this to make it happen. And so, to make things better. And if you know anything about Cobb County, our search culture, we have a really, really strong search culture. We just pulled out our 10th civilian of the year. So it's pretty crazy. It's 10 civilian rescues already in 2026. And here we are, almost April 1st. So that's a big number. Granted, 5 of them were on the same fire, but at the same time, like, 10's a big number to have pulled out for a metro department. So that is it goes to show what our culture is. Like, we show up to buildings and we are very aggressive with search. Some people are probably going to turn off to that word aggressive. It's not that we're not calculated. We're calculated. We're taking calculated risks. We understand what that is, but at the same time, we are going into every building expecting to find victims, and we're really pushing to find people. And so that has become it's a winning performance measure for us in Cobb County. We just keep getting them and keep finding them. It's like, holy crap, And we just had last week, we had people from outside the department come and spend an entire week with us. Our recruits were going through search week. And so 2 guys from Ventura County, California came out, and 2 guys from the Connecticut Fire Academy. They came down, and they just shadowed. They wanted to be there. I got a text today from a guy from Connecticut. Got back home, his department had a grab. Ladder rescue, brought a victim down a ladder. It's like, it hasn't even been a week, and these guys are already making grabs. That's amazing. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's what you're doing it for. And I in terms of your, like, some people's hesitancy to use the aggressive word, right? If you want to put that in quotes, right?
Sure.
I am very adamant that the aggressiveness that a company can have is directly proportional to the preparation that they had up to that moment, right? The more you prepare, the more aggressive you're allowed to be, because you're more aware of what's around you, right? And sometimes we see that word aggressive and we think of that as, cowboy shit, right? And
yes,
I will say, the more knowledgeable you are, the more you can do quote unquote cowboy shit, but it's not because of recklessness. It's because of competency, right? Like very stark competency, right?
No, that's the thing, right? Like, I look back at aggressive, and I could look back in my life, growing up playing sports, football, whatever, it's like, hey man, I want to play on defense with the dudes that are aggressive. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want the guy who's like, he's very confident in his skill set, and he's going to go out and freaking crush somebody. Like, we're here to win. And it's the same thing on the fireground. Like, we're going to show up and we're going to win. We're a winning team. We're here to win. We're here to crush that fire. We're here to rescue the civilians that are trapped inside of the building. And if you want to be part of something like that, then you need to probably be a little aggressive. The crew that I currently work with right now is a very, very aggressive crew, but it's not that, again, not aggressive, but confident in their skill sets. And I trust them in their skill sets. And so that's what it's about. It's about when you show up, I think about it as a captain. I have to ride on the car sometimes I ride up as an acting battalion chief. And when I'm sitting in that battalion chief role and I'm in command of a fire, like, the crew that shows up that I know is confident and I can give them any job on the fireground, like, that's the winning team. Those are the dudes that are going to get the assignments, right? It's the crew that doesn't show up that's like, kind of quiet and soft skilled and like, oh, they're not really sure if they really want to go in and get dirty or not. And it's like, okay, well, I'll just put you guys on the sidelines, right? You want the aggressive, confident crews. And again, it's not cowboy shit. It's dude, in Cobb, we're putting water on the fire from exterior. People will be like, oh, that's so soft. It's like, no, we're being aggressive because we're trying to get water onto the fire as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. It's an operational time clock for us. And we know that research shows us that water makes everything better for the victim inside. And so if we can get water in that building as quickly as possible, that's what it's about. We're getting water in that building. Right. And so we don't call it anything anymore. Now it's just like common sense firefighting. Like nobody even says like, oh, they hit it hard from the yard, or, they did a transitional attack. Like that's not even a conversation that we're having anymore. Now it's just like, hey man, we teach our kids when they're holding the nozzle in recruit school, like this is your weapon. When it has water in it, I want you to put water on fire. If you see fire, put water on it. I don't, you just do that. You don't have to wait for an officer to tell you to do that. You should be putting water on the fire no matter what.
Yeah, I think that we sometimes get our shoelaces tied in knots based on the idea of like, well, is this correct or incorrect? Like, I've been on more than one fire where I've just talked to someone that's newer being like, open the line. My God, there's fire everywhere. Put the fire out, right? It's like, we don't have to like be so concerned about like, there is a big, long trajectory of strategy and tactic and when and why and how. But also, if you're standing there with the charged hand line, and there's fire that you can see with your eyes, make the fire go away, please. Right. That's right. It's no more complicated than that. Right.
Yep. No, we've had a couple of situations here recently where I don't want to call them near misses because there certainly wasn't maydays and people weren't tracked, but we had some guys that recognized some conditions got really shitty after going into a window and doing a window initiated search, and gases started to light off over top of their head, but they, made the call, hey, let's go, get out. Like you see those videos of that, and it's like, hey man, this is a testament to our fire dynamics training of these guys understanding and getting it, because had they stayed in there, they probably would have been a really bad spot. But then when you look at what's the basis, why did they get in that scenario? It was poor extinguishment. Like we had a guy with the charged hose line in his hand, but he wasn't putting water on the fire. So it's not the search crew's fault for getting into that situation. It's the extinguishment crew's fault for not putting water on the fire. It's the engine's fault. And those were scenarios where basically, charged hose line. And this kid was somebody who worked for an officer who basically said, hey, don't do anything until I tell you, and so we got to erase some of that stuff in our department still and fix some of those company officer issues. The micromanagers, get rid of them, like give this kid his weapon and let him understand that, like teach him, lead him so that he knows it's okay to put water on the fire. So that's right now we are literally in talks in our department at the captain BC level, operations chief level of like, hey, are we maybe a little bit too aggressive with search? And, we've had a couple of close calls here and there. And it's like, well, no, those close calls happened because we weren't putting damn water on the fire. Like, let's open up our minds. Let's go talk to those crews and go, hey man, where was the water? What's happening here? So that's, it's always a delay on water, and that's where people get jammed up.
Yeah. And search culture is directly related to engine culture, right? You have to have 100%. One to do the other, right? They are, compadres, if you will, Hey gang, I've been told I do a poor job of this and that it would be really helpful if I would start asking my listeners for some support. So if you would please do me a favor, I would really appreciate it. And that would be to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Follow the show on social media and share the show and our posts whenever you can. It really makes a lot more of a difference than you might think, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you. This podcast to you is brought to you in part by HIAX Boots. You can tell a lot about a brand by the way they choose to advertise, and HIAX made it simple. They said, let us send you some products and just talk about how you think about them. And, I can't say I couldn't be more impressed, right? They sent me 2 pairs of boots. I've been told that I don't do a good job saying which ones they are. So they've sent me the Fire Eagle Air and the Fire Eagle Extreme to kind of compare. One's a lace-up boot, one's a full pull-up boot. They're both awesome. They're both super comfortable. They're super supportive. I'm kind of going back and forth which one I like more. But I've worn them on a handful of fires at this point, and they're awesome. I'm super happy with them. I'm super excited that I have this partnership with HIAX. HIAX, and they're really a great product. So if you want to find out more, check it out at HIAXusa.com. That's HAIXusa.com, or you can check the show notes for a direct link. Today's episode is brought to you by Rigaku Analytical Devices, who are the folks who are perfecting the 1064 nanometer ramen longer than most of us have been in hazmat. And they've launched their 4th generation handheld analyzer, the Icon X. It's built specifically for real world stuff hazmat teams deal with every day. We're talking dirty powers, mixed materials, dyes, colors, all the things that make other instruments throw a tantrum. But this 1064 nanometer laser means reduced fluorescence, so you get fast, reliable chemical ID in under a minute, instead of staring at the blank screen, wondering what you did wrong. And this new platform isn't just an upgrade, it's a whole new toolbox that supports new accessories, including standoff analysis, so you can get answers without getting too close. And if you want an analyzer that's been evolving right alongside the hazmat world, check out Rigaku's newest ramen at rigakuanalytical.com, or once again, down in the show notes. Let's get back to it. So in thinking about those tactics, I'll put you on the spot and see if I can get you to pick one. But if you had to say which outdated tactic still has its teeth in the fire service most, is there one that you can look at and go, man, people are still doing this, and we've more than proven that it's terrible tactics?
Yeah, I'm going to probably get beat up for this, but it's going to be roof ventilation, man.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you why. So listen, as a truck officer standing on a roof, cutting a hole, it's bitching. This is the reality. If you've ever had a saw in your hand, you've ever cut a hole, you've been on the roof, you cut it, it's freaking awesome, right? You're up there and everybody on the Fireground's taking photos of you. Go like, oh yeah, look at the truck up there making the cut, right? Mm-hmm. And we still cut roofs in Cobb, right? I'm not that I'm against it, but here's the thing: is that it's a very difficult tactic to truly time right. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to agree with that, but we've done research studies on it. It is almost impossible to make it perfect, to get the cut just right at the right time. And I'm not telling people not to get up there, but there are other ways to ventilate that are more efficient. And the two classes that I like to put them in is roof ventilation is the best natural vent that you could do. It's the most efficient natural vent that you could do. However, mechanical ventilation, either hydraulic or PPV, is much better than natural ventilation. So having a nozzle in your hand, a fan in your hand, if you will, right? Smooth bore or fog, I don't care. If you are a very good nozzleman and you knock down the fire, you get to the base of the fire, you put the fire out, and you immediately start hydraulically ventilating and throwing gases out of the building, that's what you want. Like, that's what we need. And from there, once water's on the fire, like now it's too late for the truck. But the guys that are hardcore roof guys, I try to tell people, like, hey, search before vent, right? If you're a truck company, you shouldn't be showing up first and going to the roof. We need people inside searching. That first due truck should be searching. If there is a second due truck that shows up pretty close to that, or a heavy rescue or something, we have some isolated areas in our department where we have squad companies, and those squads, it just depends, right? Like, first due truck's going to be searching. If they get there ahead of the squad, and the squad's going to be going to the roof to cut the hole, or vice versa, right? If the squad shows up before we do on the truck, then they're going to be searching and the truck's going to be cutting the hole. So we still cut them, but I think it's definitely an outdated tactic, because there's very few fires that I see a perfect hole and perfectly timed cut happen, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's just, a lot of times it's too late. If it's too early, then you made things worse. I've seen rooms flashed over because it was too early. So probably roof ventilation is going to be the one. If you put me on the spot and make me pick it, that's probably going to be the one that's most outdated.
Good. I love a good controversial take. But no, it's, so while we're talking ventilation, let's go down that rabbit hole. I was just talking to one of our district chiefs, which is a battalion chief for, nomenclature's sake. Is we were talking about, he was wondering if our culture was ventilation averse. So he's saying that we're too restrictive in our, desire as chiefs and officers to get on ventilation early, like vent early, vent often kind of thing. What's your take on ventilation in terms of that coordinated ventilation? Should we be very aggressive about ventilating? Should we be more standoffish until we get more into the overhaul phase? What's your thought?
Yeah, I think you got to be standoffish. So that's where people make mistakes, is venting too early and then poor water application not matched with ventilation. That's how firefighters get in trouble, and that's where they make the building worse, right? So air makes things worse. So with ventilation, I think I'll just tell you from my experience in Cobb, and some Cobb guys from this will probably disagree, but we've almost forgotten about ventilation, just to be honest with you. We are so aggressive with search and so aggressive with water, is that we just dump all of our resources and focus on getting the fire out and searching the building, and ventilation becomes a little bit of an afterthought. And if you really evaluate and look at the fires, it's kind of an afterthought. So other than those isolated areas where we have that squad crew and that truck crew showing up right next to each other, those are the times that maybe a hole is going to get cut just because we have the resources to do it. In other areas of the county where that's not part of, that's not even, roof ventilation is really not even done, right? So ventilation comes later. So, and the hydraulic ventilation thing, while it's such an old tactic, is really started to get, we have a lot of numbers from the coordinated fire attack study. And really a lot of air entrainment numbers from the fire attack study to show that it's very beneficial to have that fan in your hand and hydraulically ventilate. And it's just one of those things that, even the search study was showed that, getting water on the fire and then venting with your nozzle is huge. It just pulls it and sucks it out. And we got a lot of research there to do that. So a lot of people would say that hydraulic ventilation isn't technically ventilation, because everybody thinks when they think ventilation, they automatically think go to the roof, cut a hole. But I think that you should hold off. So I think you guys are doing it right. Focusing on search and fire attack is the way to go. And then vent should come later.
Okay. Your mouth to my ears, right? Perfect. So I want to go back into your career a little bit more. So you get through the fire academy. Tell me about your, it's not your first fire, because you obviously had fires on the paid on call side, I would imagine, but talk to me about your first fire on Cobb and like how the transition to, big city career department was different in terms of tactics and strategies and response than when you were working in California.
Yeah. So what's funny is, so the small department that I work for in California, it is in South Central Los Angeles. So we ran a lot of fires, but it's just a 2-station department. Well, it's no longer there anymore. Now it's LA County 147s, and which is a great firehouse. And but anyway, so you're surrounded by big city departments. You're surrounded by LA County and LA City at the time. And so I got to learn from some big city guys by going to fires. So when I came to, I was basically I'd been on some fires, but I really was the guy in Cobb. Years ago, early in my career, I was pushing for roof ventilation, man. I was a California guy. We get on roofs, and at the time, Cobb wasn't cutting any roofs. They weren't doing that. So early in my career in Cobb, I was part of a group of people that started to really push for truck tactics. And we created a truck academy, and we were doing it on weekends. And I was one of the ventilation instructors, I was all about it. So, but I didn't know any better. I didn't have all the research and the stuff to back it up yet. Right. I was just taking my experience from Southern California, where trucks get on roofs and cut holes. And it's still like that today. West Coast is definitely a big roof ventilation area. So, I was kind of the guy that kind of drove roof ventilation in Cobb, and got a lot of people excited about it. And, I had actually been on roofs and cut holes. And so had experience doing it. There was a lot of guys that didn't have that. So, so it's interesting, that now here I am come full circle, 23 years later. And, I'm like, all right, you know what, that probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. Again, I just didn't have the information. And now that I have the information, it's like, hey, I was wrong. We probably shouldn't have made that big push for that. And fortunately, we haven't gotten anybody hurt, with roof ventilation. And honestly, I don't think roof ventilation is one of those scary things that people really need to be concerned about. If you look at the numbers and the data, and, I love the data, not drama stuff, is great, right? You look at that, it's like, we're really not killing firefighters getting on roofs. And, but at the same time, it's kind of in my point, it's a wasted tactic. It's just, those guys could be doing something else. They could be searching the building, could be going through a window. And that's what I try to tell people is like, hey, truck guy, I know it's cool to cut a hole, but it's way cooler to go through a window, grab a victim and bring them out down a ladder and then go and get the medal, at the award ceremony the next year. So that's way cooler. So yeah.
So in terms of like bodies on scene, like staffing and stuff like that, how did things shift in terms of once you got into Cobb? Was it way more people on a Fireground, like way less tasks per person? Or was it, I just know on some paid on call or like smaller departments, all of a sudden it's like everyone has to wear 1,000 hats because there's only like 6 people that are going to be there or whatever the thing might be.
Yeah, no, definitely like way more people. Everybody works for the same department, so everybody's on the same page. And we have some city departments in Cobb County but they're automatic aid. They run with us. So while they wear a different badge, they're pretty much the exact same department. And we have the exact same tactics, work very well together. So yeah, showing up now with, on a residential structure fire, we're getting 24 to 25 people in there. And then a commercial building fire, we're well over 30. And back in the early days, I can remember less than 10 people on a fire. So, so now we're just a ton of resources. So I'm very fortunate to have that. And we're a large enough department. That's what's interesting about Atlanta, right? In general, like a lot of people don't understand, like, where the hell is Cobb County, Georgia? And it's like, all right, well, we're Atlanta, the Brave Stadium's in Cobb County. But and we're the same size as the city of Atlanta and same size as other metro agencies. There's all these about 8 metro agencies that are all about 30 stations and have anywhere between 800 and 1,000 firefighters. So if you had one big, large city of Atlanta fire department, we could be 300 stations strong probably. But so each agency, Cobb County, like, we don't call Atlanta. They don't call us. We don't need them. We have our own resources. And so it's just one of those things where we kind of work in right next door to each other, but independently of each other. Is
there a disadvantage to that or an advantage, or what do you think?
I don't know. I think, we've done some things where we've had some natural disasters and things like that go. And then we work together on, some of that type of stuff, like, large scale incidents we'll get together, but there's rarely any kind of fires that ever happen that we get sent to go help in the city of Atlanta or vice versa. We don't ask for Atlanta to come help us either. But I probably, like, on the borders, definitely like on the Atlanta border, or Cobb border, it'd probably be faster to get some Atlanta engines to come across the line and help us. And especially like on the south side where I work right now, it's a, lower income, tougher area. And we definitely could use those resources with city of Atlanta on that side. And it's a lot of fire area for both Cobb and Atlanta on the south side there. And so we definitely could probably assist each other for sure.
So how long into your career in Cobb before you have that near miss?
Let's see, 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're still a firefighter. How long before you then promote to a driver?
Right after that incident, I was going through the process when it happened. And and I got promoted like maybe 6 months later and got promoted to engineer. Yeah. So an engineer is while it's called an engineer and you would think that all you do is drive the engine, you actually rarely drive the apparatus, to be honest with you.
Oh, interesting.
With officers taking off and everything, you're stepping up and you're right into an acting officer. So you could, day one, when you get promoted as an engineer, you could be on the seat of the engine or even a seat of a truck. And so, you're going to get thrown into that. So our promotion process, while we do have like a pump test and those kind of things to go through, we focus heavily on our assessment center, which has, all the strategy and tactics pieces to it and personnel issues and those type of things. So we try to prepare our people to be an acting officer on day one.
And so you're not only testing for, your engineer at that point, then now you test again to become a lieutenant, then test again to become a captain.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so in your system, is it, a captain is the station captain, and then you have lieutenants that work under them in that individual station, or how do the ranks work?
Nope. So captains are on the trucks in Cobb. That's the way it works. So it's specific to your vehicle you ride on. So we have engine lieutenants and then truck captains.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, so if you make captain, you ride the truck. So like, why I have a lot of experience and kind of focus on engine operations. I'm passionate about that. And have taught a lot of stuff, all over the place with FSRI, focusing on engine suppression tactics and things like that. So, but I ride on a truck right now. So, like I was teaching with Chad Christensen yesterday, and we did this whole like engine truck thing where like he handled the engine stuff and then I handled the search part. And so he was like, stay in your lane, truck captain. And I was like, listen, I was an engine lieutenant for a lot of years, but now I've been a truck captain for a while too, so it's one of those things. But yeah. I'll still, in the way it works, like in our system, like I'll still pick up overtime and I can ride as an engine officer, so yeah.
So, you start your career trajectory or your kind of learning journey, if you will, after that near miss. How does that progress as you change ranks? Are you learning different things? Are you at different levels? Are you keying in on different portions of the Fireground?
Yes, for sure. Now like now there's just, you got to have the bigger picture, right? So like, as I got to the captain level, like engine's pretty easy, right? Like engine's like, we got to focus on, we're a blue card system. So love it or hate it. It's one of those things. It's what we use as our command system and as our language. And I think we've grown into the system to where it's a very good thing, right? For us, for Cobb Fire. But our engine lieutenants are taking command initially. That first arriving officer is taking command because the way it is with blue cards. So you've got to be pretty jam up on your size ups but you're a working boss. So as a working boss, as an engine lieutenant, like I'm showing up on scene as a truck and I'm not taking command from that engine lieutenant. He's got it. I'm just there. I'm task focused. Right. Like I ride on a tiller. So we're splitting, right? 2 in, 2 out. So that me and the other firefighter are going around the rear to search. And my other 2 drivers are putting ladders on the building to get in and do a window initiated search while the line's going to the front door. But that engine boss is the working boss. He's keeping track of us. So if I arrive with my engine, for example, like he's got it, he's got command. He knows that we're search and that he's second due engine, giving water supply. He's giving out those assignments until either the 4th due apparatus gets there or a battalion chief has arrived to take command. So it's so you got to have that bigger picture as a lieutenant. It's more of a organizational skill thing, right? Like, oh man, I got to keep track of like my radio traffic. I got to listen to this and who's coming, who am I assigning, where are they going to be, and really trying to keep a track of the first 3 units kind of working on an incident before a BC gets there.
Do you pre-plan your order of arrival and your tasks? Like, is it like, I know my first due engine's on search and my second due engine's on RIT and my, whatever the thing might be?
Yep. No, we don't do that. It's by order of arrival. So you could be on the second due engine and you could get assigned search because the truck's not there yet.
Oh, okay.
So it's set by priorities, right? So one of the things that we try to talk to our officers about size up is, we try to, what can you do first? What can you do faster? Can you take the problem away from the victim? Can you take the victim away from the problem? And so if you get people thinking in that mindset of like, okay, I'm, fire focused and I'm victim focused and I'm trying to figure out what can I do faster? I mean, obviously if there's somebody hanging off of a balcony and they're saying, we're hanging out of a window, they're saying, please help me. And the fire's on the back of the house away from them. Like clearly it's faster to go grab that person out of the window. Right. So you take the victim away from the problem. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first priority. But if not, I got to put water on the fire to be able to get to the victim. And oftentimes that is the case of getting quick water under the fire in order to be able to get to the victim to search and grab them.
And in that context, are you having crews then leave their apparatus and go and do things off of a different apparatus, just in terms of, say you have it's engine, truck. Is that truck going to now take a backup line off the engine and use that as, I assume obviously you're going to have a primary line, backup line, primary search, do you have to wait then for the third engine to then be the backup line if that second due engine was doing search?
Yeah. So that technically can happen. They try not to put trucks on hose lines, but it's battalion dependent and battalion chief boss dependent. usually the truck is going to try to search. Actually, a young guy texted me today with almost the exact same question. He's a brand new seat rider. He's a brand new engineer. And I used to work with him. He used to be one of my firefighters. And he's like, hey, Cap, I got a question for you. What if I arrive first two engine and I have an ALS rescue with me? Should I send those guys into search as the priority, or should I have them pull a second line? And I'm like, it totally depends on the building and the fire. But you gotta never, because he was like, what if a truck's 2 minutes away? Should I wait for the truck to do the search? And I'm like, well, what's the victim profile? Is there like, are we talking, there's a really high likelihood of somebody trapped, or we have reports of somebody trapped? Like, you don't want to like hold off on an assignment because a truck's about to show up, right? Like, we want to make sure that we're doing things as quickly as possible. And what if that truck shows up and it's not the truck crew that you want? So it's like, oh, that guy, that old captain, he doesn't really want to go inside. So he's probably going to try to find some command position on the, on the Charlie division or something like that. And so I was like, it totally depends, it's just so many variables there, but we try to, by order of arrival is what we do. But yes, sometimes it does get a little wonky like that.
Interesting. Yeah, because we do by order of arrival, except for you always stay in your own lane. So, first due engine, second due engine, you already know what you're going to do. Same thing with the trucks and the squad. But yeah, that's a little interesting. You guys have 4-man engines and ladders?
No,
or three?
Yep. 3-man engines, 4-man trucks for the most part. We can, if your truck's not a tiller, if you're on a tiller, you get to go to 4. You always have 4 minimum. But if it's a regular, we call them biffs. They're rear mounts, but they're bucket and fronts. Okay. So it's a biff. So if you're on a biff, you could be down to 3 for the day. And then we have ALS rescues that they look like ambulances, but we don't transport. We have a private ambulance company that transports for us. But they have a stretcher in them. So in case we have to transport a firefighter, we have that ability to do so. And then we have squads. You probably heard of Cancel the Squad. Cancel the Squad was started in Cobb County, Georgia.
Oh, were they really?
The guys the guys that run that page are people in Cobb County and Marietta Fire Department, City of Atlanta Fire Department. There's a group of them that they all kind of hide behind the curtain and put some of that up. But
I ride a squad, so there's people that love those stickers and put them on things that we have. And
man.
Okay. This question goes one way or the other with everyone I've talked to, which is, how did you know that it was time to promote?
For me, it was, I need to make more money. I'll be honest.
That's one of the answers of the one way or the other. Yeah.
I need to make more money. Do I feel comfortable? I was very conscious of the fact that I need to understand and feel like I've been a firefighter long enough, and that I have enough experience. I've been to enough fires that I felt comfortable promoting. That was a huge piece to me. And I had finally got to that point and had a young son. And I was like, okay, it's time. It's time for you to grow up. Did I want to? No. The internal me was, I want to ride backwards forever. That's just a reality. Like, I'm not trying to like get promoted and make chief. I don't want to, go and be in the office and be the fire chief. Like, I would love to ride backwards, if I can, for my whole career. But the reality is, a financial part of it, I couldn't support that. My wife's an ER nurse, and we just didn't have a lot of money. We're both working 2 jobs and just to try to get by. So it's one of those things where, at some time you got to grow up, and so that was the reason why I started to get promoted. And I wanted to spend 5 years in each rank in Cobb. That was kind of my goal. And so I did 5 years as a firefighter, did 5 as a driver, 5 as a lieutenant. And then now I'm a captain, and I'm going to remain a captain. So, I'll do my last 10 as a captain. I guess I've been, 7 now as a captain, and love it. Love the position. Gives me the opportunity to still go and put on an SCBA and go to work. And I still have to ride the battalion chief car every now and then, but I don't have the full rank of battalion chief. And so I don't have to deal with the mess. I'm just a babysitter every now and then,
Yeah. And so you talked about writing your first article with the help of Bill Gustin. How did that progress in terms of like your writing and stuff? How did you get more and more involved in teaching and writing and publication and whatnot?
After writing that first article, just had lots of thoughts in my head of as things that just were continuing to evolve right in my head, and thought processes, and taking experiences that I had on the Fireground. And I think my second article was written on a civilian rescue that we had. And that civilian rescue was really the catalyst for where we are in Cobb County today. It, just be honest with you, man, didn't go very well. We got a grab, and it didn't go great. We found a guy in a stairwell, and we didn't know how to drag, and we didn't know how to do anything. We weren't expecting to find him. We showed up, and we're like, oh, we'll just do a right hand search. We came across the stairs, and then next thing you know, we've got a guy in the middle of the stairwell, down unconscious, and we sloppily got him out of the building. And afterwards, we went back. Fortunately, I was working with a very good crew at the time, a very busy station, a lot of senior dudes, and they were like, hey man, I know everybody wants to pat each other on the back right now because we just got a civilian rescue, but that didn't go great. Let's talk about that. And so we reached out to some more senior members in our department who had been on civilian rescues and had some experience with that. We talked to them, and so I just kind of told my story and wrote my second article. Was because it's found a victim. Now what, right? Like I had been told by a senior guy, like, oh, take this webbing and put it in your pocket, and when you come across a victim, man, we're gonna do the handcuff knot, and that seems like a great plan. I'll just be honest with you, like, that didn't even come to mind. Like I forgot about the webbing in my pocket. Right. And so we just went to grab it, and everybody's pulling and just not very coordinated. And we could have done a lot better job that night. And fortunately, I was with some dudes that are pretty humble and wanted to make it better and learn from that experience. And we built upon that and created an entire search culture with a huge group of people from internally my organization. And when we just went from there, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And, now we are with the Cobb County search culture, everybody's talking about it.
Mm-hmm. How did you transition into your work with UL FSRI?
Yep. So same thing, wrote that first article, and I go to FDIC with the guy from my department who had also written an article in Fire Engineer magazine, and he was teaching at FDIC. So he's like, hey, why don't you guys come up? And we went up there and slept in a hotel room, 10 guys in one room type of thing. We're all sleeping on the floor, and it's like a frat house. And but after that first year, after seeing what FDIC was all about and taking some hands-on classes as a student, I was just like, oh man, like mind blown. Like, oh, it's so much bigger than the American Fire Service is so much bigger than what I know in Cobb County, right? And so my world was just open up to all these things. And so I was like, how do I get back here every year? Because I don't really have the money to come here as a student each year. Can't pay for this on my own. My wife let me do it the first time. And how do I get back? And so they were like, well, you can get a free, apply to be an instructor, and then you get to come for free every year. So I was like, all right, let's do that. So, so I basically made up a class based off of my article. And my first year, I had like 5 people in the class. And then I was like, all right, well, that was a tough go. I'll just do it again. I'll change the title. And so I changed the title to Attack from the Burn Side. And that started to create some controversy, and had about 100 people in the class the next year. And Steve Kerber happened to be sitting in the class. And I didn't even know he was in there, to be honest with you. I went into the instructor room afterwards. They have you go in and you check all your evals. And so I'm pulling out the papers, looking at all my evals and reading them. And I happen to sit down at the table, and Steve Kerber sitting at this table too. And he introduces himself to me, and he's like, hey, that was a really good class. And I was like, oh shit, you were in my class, and he's like, yeah, really good class. Here's my card. If you ever want to be part of a technical panel, we got some stuff coming up. And I was like, yeah, I'd be honored to be part of something like that. So about 6 months goes by, and next thing you know, I get an email from UL, and I got an invitation to go to Chicago to be part of the exterior fire attack and attic fire study. And so that was really my first introduction into that. Got up there, and I think that I look back on it now, it's like, how did you get on the advisory board? And there's no applications for any of that. It just all continued to happen. And I think I just kept opening my mouth and talking and, creating friends. And next thing you know, I must have been saying the right things. And it's because I'm getting invitations to go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, to go to this advisory board meeting. And I'm like, what the hell is this about? So go there. And next thing you know, I'm like sitting in the room with legends, right? Like, I'm like, holy crap, man. Like I'm sitting there with like Pete Van Dorp, training chief of Chicago Fire, Derek Alconis, training chief of LA County, and John Cermillo from FDNY, and George Healy from FDNY. And like all these, these guys are legends that I know from the research side of things. And I've looked up to them. I've read all their articles, and now I'm sitting in this room, and it's a pretty crazy experience. So, and then from there, it just continued. So I've been on the advisory board now for 10 years, and it's evolved into something completely different than what we initially were. We were so focused on fire tactics and what's the next study, and now we've really focused on fire as a world problem. There's a lady who sits on there now that she works for the United Way, and it's like how fire affects people and affects our society. And so like you really start to get up to like this 50,000 foot level, really start thinking about it from a global perspective like that. It's very interesting. So myself and George Healy are the only two firefighters, and Sean DeCrane from IFF. We're the three firefighters left on that group, and the rest are PhDs that work for research universities or VPs of the United Way. So it's an interesting mix of people now, but it's still great. I mean, we get to meet once a year and kind of bounce ideas off of each other and get to learn from each other. And I love it, man. It's great.
What have you learned through your involvement with them that was maybe unexpected coming in? Has there been any experiences that you would have not foreseen? Because the research is so matter of fact. Some of the things that I thought would be unexpected was like, clearly nobody's going to challenge this. Like, how do you challenge it? It's backed research, right? Like we have the answers. We have every sensor that's put up. And I was kind of surprised by the people that really challenged it. And they were like, nope, that's bullshit. Like I'm throwing the bullshit flag. And that my research my experience doesn't match with that research. And so I'm going to go completely against it. And that's actually where Stop Believing, Start Knowing, the Facebook page came from, man. It's because I was on the exterior fire technical panel, and there was a lot of pushback. And I'm like, man, I want to reach out and like on behalf of UL, but I'm not branded with them. You know what I mean? Like I'm not an employee of theirs, but like somebody needs to stick up for the research. And so myself and PJ Norwood, we put our necks out there, man, and started this Facebook page. And be honest with you, dude, in the early days, it was insane. It was like Jerry Springer, like just a fight, but now it's not like that. And PJ and I don't even really have any involvement with that page. It's still in my name because once you start a Facebook page, it always stays in your Facebook profile. But we have some retired battalion chiefs from the Virginia area that they run the page for us, and still now it just cruises. And so there's like 250,000 followers, and the reach is insane. And so those guys just kind of do their thing, and they have Phil Jose on there every Tuesday, does Reading Smoke, and awesome.
It's still a cool working page. But that page early on I think that's the biggest surprise, was that there was going to be haters out there. And it's good to see now, because there were haters in the early days. It's like, definitely like I got in full on social media battles with, and they probably still don't like me to this day, but whatever, you say things over social media and kind of gets a little ridiculous, but they now have come full circle to where they're actually supporters of the research, and we're on later technical panels and things like that. So it's pretty interesting to see it all come full circle. You
touched on this earlier a little bit, about whether or not the fire service will ever just blanketly accept research and, measured information, Yep. Do you think that that's a possibility? Like, do you think that we'll ever get to the point where, scientific consensus will win over anecdotal experience, or is it forever going to be a kitchen table argument?
I think it's going to be a forever kitchen table argument, only because when I look at it, I truly think that the people who are against it, they actually know. Deep down inside, they know. But their ego doesn't allow them to let that go and to open up, because there's too much anecdotal evidence for you to just be completely blind to it, right? So I think that they really internally know, but they have some sort of ego and have built some sort of reputation internally within their own department to where they're that guy and they just have to continue to be that guy, and they're going to be that guy until they retire. Right. Like, I'm never giving in. I'm not going to listen to this research. Like, I'm going to retire on this, just staying on that agenda. So that's one of those things where it's very interesting that I think an ego piece about it, but my son is in the fire service, and the one that my oldest son, who he was the one that made me change, and after the near miss that I was thinking about and everything. So it's cool to see it come full circle. And he's a probationary firefighter for another Metro Atlanta agency, and it's cool to see him go through his own trials and tribulations of people that he works with, and conversations that are being had at the kitchen table, and his perspective of things, and him trying to create and build his own path, not follow in my footsteps by any means, so I don't want that for him,
Yeah.
So
what does it mean? What does it mean to you as a father to have your son, even if he's not taking the same exact path, deciding to see what you did with your life and emulate it in some way?
And I'll try not to get teared up, but yeah, I'm so proud of both my boys. My oldest son is a firefighter, and I always thought as a father, having boys and getting really into the job was like, yeah, I want them to follow in my footsteps. I want them to be firefighters. I can remember talking to, their mother, my ex-wife, about it. And, and really having conversations with her about hey, I really want them to be firefighters. And she's like, well, we're just not going to do that. We're just going to let them find their own path. And, initially my oldest son, he went off right after high school and thought he wanted to go to college. He got accepted and he went off. He did one semester at college, complete failure, which, that's like a classic fireman story. So many guys went and did one semester. And, but yeah, so he did one semester, total failure, came back home, and then was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with life. And so I didn't really push him in that direction, and then he was like, hey, I think I want to be a firefighter. I was like, okay, let's get you enrolled in EMT school and, and that kind of stuff. And so now he's all in, dude. This week he's taking ropes class. He's in rope tech class this week. And I got a picture from a guy that's there with him, and he's hanging off of a tower, so it's cool to see it, man. I'm pretty pumped to do that. And my youngest son is, he actually leaves for Okinawa, Japan tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And he's going to be in Japan for 3 years. He just finished School of Infantry. He's a machine gunner with the U.S. Marine Corps.
Oh, and, awesome. That's great.
Yeah. Couldn't be more proud of both of them, man. The direction they're headed. They're both very young and have careers, and they're headed off into a thing. And, they're both serving, and one serving their country and the other serving their community. And it's pretty cool to see, for sure. Super proud.
How does, when you think about the work that you've accomplished thus far and the work that you're still doing, how does your legacy tie into that in terms of what do you want to leave behind and what do you want to accomplish? What groundwork do you want to set for the next generation?
And mostly, honestly, I'm still obsessed with it only because I enjoy it. I really enjoy, being here in Las Vegas and interacting with other firefighters. And I want people I want it to be better than the way I found it. That's the biggest thing, is that hopefully some of these younger guys can take it and, take some of the stuff that we have in our book and really start to create change within their own department, right? I'm clearly a change agent. It's not like I ever wanted to be that. You just kind of become that at some point. And so as a change agent, you have to have the knowledge base and the things to back it up, right? I can't just ask for change and really not have everything in line of hey, this is why things need to change. And I can show you why. Here's the anecdotal evidence of why we should change. That's the hard part, is that a lot of people try to push change and maybe it's too early. And I definitely have been part of that, where I tried to push too hard too early, and hurt me politically within my own department. Sometimes it's just one of those things where you got to keep going. So when it's all over for me, hopefully I'll look back and have guys in the fire service to be like, hey man, I got involved and I got engaged in the fire service because I took a class from Sean Gray. That would be awesome. I love, hearing victory stories when people come back and, we were part of something as a group of instructors that showed them a technique, maybe even just like removing victims down a ladder, and they went back to their agency and like a week later, boom, they get a grab. Like, that's huge. Like, holy crap, man. Like, that just happened. And so it's like, hey, I didn't know this until I came and learned it from you. And that's the wins that, hopefully I can walk away from, and, hope to see that the fire service continues in the direction where we're headed with all the evidence-based fireground operations. And, I'm not done yet. I can retire in 18 months, but I see myself kind of hanging out for the next 5 years. But at the same time, I also don't want to be that guy that's 80 years old and still going to fire conferences. I don't want to be that guy either, but I get it. I see those guys, and I understand their passion. It's hard to give up, man. That's the thing, is when you get old and you start to move on, like, you're part of something very special, and it's something that's been part of my life and an obsession. And it's going to be definitely hard to walk away from, but I mentioned Pete Van Dorp earlier, and Pete's still a friend and a mentor of mine. And he's currently on a boat, a year-long trip traveling around the world.
Oh, wow.
And it's like he's finally stepped away. While his name is still tied in, he still has many friends in the fire service. Like, he's finally stepped away and been able to distance himself from it. He's not writing articles anymore. People still email him like, hey, can you come and teach a class here and there? And he just forwards them to me. Like, hey, can you handle this for me? So, and I was like, yeah, I'll put him in touch with the right person. But yeah. So, but yeah, it's cool. So I hope that I can be like Pete and eventually step away from it.
I don't want to miss the chance to talk to you about your before we get to the book. That'll be our cherry on top here, which is in a second. But you talk about being an agent of change, and it's so hard to change things in the fire service, right? Because we're so resistant to it. I remember I went to dinner with Kurt Isaacson one time, and he told me that the way to change an organization is, 10 pounds of pressure 100% of the time, right? That's was his advice. What's the Sean Gray method? How do we change an agency, especially if they're resistant to updating tactics, strategies, and, tools, whatever it might be?
No, he's, Kurt is 100% right on that. Is you got to continuously do it. Like, and listen, I've bounced my head off of some walls a bunch of times, right? But I never give up. I always, if I have something that I believe in and that I think that it's important, and I really want to change it, and there's a reason behind it, my name doesn't need to be on it. Like, I joke with people in my agency now, like guys that are real close to me, they'll be like, something will happen in the agency and somebody will take credit for it. And, it'll be going off, and they'll kind of like look at me like, weren't you the one that was like bringing that up? And I'm like, hey man, I'm the Wizard of Oz, bro. I just sit behind the man behind the curtain, and I'm just kind of the guy hiding in the background. And, I know you've had Frank Lieb on, and Frank Lieb was that guy in the FDNY. Like, he did a lot of things behind the scenes. And so that's the thing, is you have to be very humble, and it can't be your name on something. And so, realizing that, and if you still want there to be change because of whatever the topic is, and you're trying to make a difference, then don't make it that it's yours. Make it so that it's everyone's and part of that department. And sometimes there's people that can deliver it better than you can. And so you realize that and hand it off to them and let them deliver it. And then it's just a win, because you still won, you still made that change. And internally, personally, maybe people don't really know, about it, and you don't get credit for it, but that's okay. Like, I don't need credit for it. Like, I'm good. I have the credit is in my own head of like, hey, I was able to make that change. And those are the wins that I think you have to do. But I definitely be careful of like putting yourself out there too much, because learn from me. I've definitely pissed some people off in my organization because I pushed too hard and challenged them. And I became, an enemy, whether they're intimidated by me or whatever. It's something that, definitely hurt my career as far as climbing a ladder,
So to round this thing off, we had to talk about the book, The Evolving Fireground, right? The second edition just released recently, right?
Yep.
So talk to me about the book, and then talk to me about the changes or the updates that came into the second edition that just came out.
All right. So I'll tell you the foundation of the book originally, because it's like, I never wanted to be an author. Like I wasn't going to, like, it's just one of those things. Like I never really like want to be an author. But FSRI and being involved with UL and the research we really wanted to try to make a way and be a translator of the research, right? Because some of it's very challenging. The fire service has a hard time looking at charts and graphs. And for somebody like Dan Madrikowski, he's so smart and he can look at a graph and it's very simple for him, but it's not simple for most firefighters. It's not simple for me to look at a graph and understand it. And so I wanted to take that research and translate it into jargon that the American Fire Service can understand, and really start to develop and take that stuff and just put it down on a book and put it on a paper. So the first edition was our first stab at it. And there were things in the first edition that weren't 100%. The search chapter, for example, the search study wasn't out yet. So I just put in all of our stuff in there from Cobb County, all the stuff that we do, from window initiated search, but we were calling it VES then. And, we were doing all of these things in Cobb. We were having a lot of success with it, but I basically told the Cobb story in the search chapter of book number 1. Well, now I go back and we changed the second edition and we completely revamped the search chapter. It just happened to be fortunate that the search study matched everything we were doing in Cobb already. And so it was a win. It's like, oh, hey, now we have this huge validation piece in Cobb County to show that, we've been doing things right. It wasn't just us guessing, like we were following along with fire dynamics and closing doors when we search, and searching ahead of hose lines is perfectly fine, is safe and you can do it. And those are some of the things that, really in the second book that I think are probably going to challenge some people, because we have a lot of things that might be risk averse and, just searching ahead of hose lines is a perfect example, operating the opposite of hose streams. Like, you're not going to get hurt. You're not going to get steamed. You're going to get wet. That's the only thing that's going to happen to you. And so getting people to realize that kind of stuff that was the goal of kind of putting this all on paper. I personally, I'm not a guy who's ever really going to, like the class I taught yesterday, for example, there's no slide that has my book in it. I'm not trying to sell books. Like if you know anything about fire service books, you don't get rich off of a book. I make a few bucks off of each one, and maybe we'll sell 1,000 or 2,000 copies. So it's not like you're getting rich, and so you spend 6 months of your life doing it. And so it's more about the passion of being able to put it down on paper, and hopefully some people can take and read it. And like I have some, like I mentioned, my buddies in Houston, my guy D-Ray, I just sent him a copy the other day, and D-Ray was like, dude, light bulbs. He's like, every chapter, he's like, I'm reading it. He's like, I'm only on chapter 3. He's like, but light bulbs, all these light bulbs keep coming off. And that's kind of the goal of the book, is like taking people's experience and then giving them, explaining it, the research into that will match their experience, and the light bulbs start to come on, right? It's like, this is a guy, he's a captain in Houston. He goes to lots of fires. He has a ton of experience. And now he's starting to realize, like, air entrainment, water mapping, surface cooling, all of this stuff that he didn't know anything about, right, until we went there. And now he's like, oh man, like I get it now. Like, oh man, it's starting to make sense. Right. So, so that's really the whole thing about the book. That was why we did the second edition. And in the second edition, not only did we rewrite some things to add in some of the newer research, we also added in some chapters like emerging technologies, and because that's a huge thing. I'm not an expert in emerging technologies, so we did tons of research to write about that type of stuff. Something that I may not have like a ton of experience in, but we felt like the American Fire Service wanted to have it explained to them from the FSRI side of things. So we took the FSRI research, translated into our version, and then created a chapter on emerging technologies. We have a chapter on line of duty deaths, and each chapter we have a fire dynamics line of duty death, we have a fire attack line of duty death, we have a search line of duty death. So every chapter is lined up with all these different line of duty deaths, and it's to honor that person, right? And so one of the things that I think is cool, like technology wise, like you can open up the book, and we have QR codes in the book that take it to the citation that we're talking about. Like if we were referencing a line of duty death, you can take your phone, hit the QR code, and it takes you directly to that report. And so it's like, hey, here,
cool.
Yeah. So it's factual, right? Like, it's like, this is what we're talking about. It's not BS. It's not Sean Gray's opinion. It's like, I'm writing this, and this is the reason, this is where I'm coming from. Here's the citation for what I'm talking about. We made it all match everything for NFPA. So if you want to use it for like a promotional exam, for example, like our book in the past has been on, it's been on Houston senior captain, their captain 2 exam, their senior captains. It was in San Antonio on their captain exam. It's been at Fort Worth on their captain's exam, all over the place. Like big departments have adopted it as a strategy and tactics manual of if you have a fire chief that's like, hey, we really need to go towards this evidence-based stuff, we're the book that they're typically going to use. So we've been successful with that. And that's this second edition. We really wanted to focus on that because we started to hear about these departments that are adopting our book. And so we wanted to kind of cater to those people that when a guy has to read a book for a promotion exam, he's not like banging his head against the wall, like, oh my God, this is the worst book ever. And because I've certainly had that experience in the past. Right. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that it's an engaging read for people. And so far so good. But like I said, I'm not somebody that's ever here. So at the end of the show, if you think I came on here to sell books, that's not the case. It just happens to be out there. So, we have a website that's up there, evolvingfire.com, and you can go on there, and we have tons of stuff on there. Like we didn't even talk about the dollhouses or any of that, but the dollhouse build plans, all that's on there. And our search folder, our search drive, Cobb County search folder is on there. If you've seen me on other stuff, other shows, we always try to give out our Cobb County search folder, and it's got tons of information. And I'm hoping you're going to link all that stuff in there, and we can get people that information
in the show notes. Yeah, all that will be available for everyone. Well, I appreciate your time, Sean. It's been a pleasure. I hope you get a copy of the book. I'll read it, and I look forward to it. It's exactly what I'm interested in. So thank you for doing the work that you've done and continue to do. And thank you, for loving firefighting and sharing it with the rest of us.
Yeah, man. Happy to send you a copy. Send me your address and I'll get you one.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you again.
Yep. No, thank you guys.